You know what's crazy? Japan has been quietly perfecting ideas that solve everyday problems so elegantly that the rest of the world is just now catching on. We're talking about concepts that make life smoother, communities stronger, and honestly just make you think, why didn't we think of that? Today we're diving into 13 Japanese ideas that are so brilliant, they should honestly be taught everywhere. And hey, if you love learning about genius solutions from around the world, hit that subscribe button right now because we've got plenty more where this came from. Let's get into it. First up, let's talk about Kaizen. This isn't just some corporate buzzword, it's a philosophy that translates to continuous improvement. The idea is simple but powerful. Instead of waiting for some massive breakthrough or complete overhaul, that you make small, incremental changes every single day. Think about it. In Japanese factories, workers at every level are encouraged to suggest tiny improvements to their process. Not revolutionary changes, just little tweaks. Maybe moving a tool 3 inches closer. Maybe adjusting the height of a workstation. Over time, these microscopic improvements compound into massive gains in efficiency and quality. Toyota made this famous, but it applies to everything. Your fitness routine, your study habits, your relationships. Stop waiting for the perfect moment to transform your life. Just improve by 1% today, then do it again tomorrow. That's Kaizen, and it's genuinely life-changing when you embrace it. Now let's move to something that hits different when you really understand it. Ikigai. This is your reason for being, your purpose for getting out of bed every morning. The Japanese have this beautiful framework that sits at the intersection of four things: what you love, what you're good at, what the world needs, and what you can be paid for. When you find that sweet spot where all four overlap, that's your ikigai. It's not just about finding a job or a hobby. It's about discovering that thing that makes your life feel meaningful. In Okinawa, one of the world's blue zones, where people live exceptionally long lives, researchers found that having a strong sense of ikigai was a common thread among centenarians. These folks weren't just surviving, they were thriving because they had purpose. The modern world often separates work from passion, duty from joy. Ikigai reminds us that the goal should be integrating these elements, not compartmentalizing them. That when you align your life with your ikigai, work doesn't feel like work. Contributions don't feel like obligations. You're just living in harmony with your purpose. Here's one that schools everywhere desperately need. In Japan, students clean their own classrooms, hallways, and even bathrooms. Yeah, you heard that right. There are no janitors in most Japanese schools. Instead, students spend about 15 minutes after lunch cleaning their school. And before you think that's some kind of punishment, understand what it actually teaches. Respect for shared spaces, pride in your environment, the understanding that you're part of a community where everyone contributes. These kids learn early that they're not entitled to have someone else clean up after them. They learn that maintaining a clean space is everyone's responsibility. Like, can you imagine the shift in mindset if every student worldwide grew up cleaning their own school? We'd have a generation that respects public spaces, that doesn't litter, that understands the connection between their actions and the world around them. It's not about cheap labor, it's about building character and community responsibility from a young age. This one idea could transform school culture globally. Let's talk about motenai. This word is hard to translate directly, but it captures a sense of regret over waste. It's that feeling when something usable is wasted, when potential goes unrealized. In practical terms, it's a philosophy of respecting resources and avoiding waste. Japan has limited natural resources, so this mindset developed out of necessity and became deeply cultural. Before you throw something away, motenai asks you to consider if it can be repaired, repurposed, or reused. It's about gratitude for the objects in your life and the resources that created them. In our throwaway culture where fast fashion and planned obsolescence dominate, motenai offers a different path. Fix your stuff. Use things until they're truly done. Appreciate what you have rather than constantly craving new things. This isn't about being cheap, it's about being respectful. Respectful to the resources of the planet, to the labor that created the object, and honestly to yourself because you're not constantly spending money replacing perfectly functional items. Number 5 is Shinrin Yoku, which translates to forest bathing. This is the practice of spending time in nature, specifically in forests, to improve your health and well-being. It's not hiking with a destination in mind or exercising. It's simply being present among trees, breathing the air, listening to the sounds, observing the light filtering through leaves. Japanese researchers have actually studied this extensively and found measurable health benefits. Lower cortisol levels, reduced blood pressure, improved mood, boosted immune function. The trees themselves release compounds called phytoncides that have real physiological effects on humans. We've become so disconnected from nature, living in concrete jungles, staring at screens all day. Shinrin Yoku reminds us that we're biological creatures who evolved in natural environments. Our bodies and minds need that connection. You don't need a pristine wilderness. Even urban parks provide benefits. The idea is regular, intentional time among trees as a health practice. If this was taught everywhere, if people understood nature time as essential medicine rather than optional recreation, we'd see massive improvements in mental health and stress-related illness. Here's a social concept that's absolutely fascinating. Omoyari means empathy and consideration for others. But it goes deeper than just understanding someone's feelings. It's about anticipating the needs and feelings of others and acting thoughtfully to avoid causing them difficulty or discomfort. In practice, this manifests everywhere in Japanese society. Talking quietly on trains so you don't disturb others. Wrapping gifts beautifully because the presentation shows respect. Going out of your way to help someone even when not asked. It creates a social fabric where people constantly consider their impact on others. Now imagine if this was actively taught in schools worldwide. Not just be nice, but actual training in anticipating how your actions affect others and adjusting accordingly. We'd see less noise pollution, less inconsiderate behavior, more harmonious communities. The beautiful thing about Omoyari is that it's not about rules imposed from outside. It's an internalized awareness that makes you want to be considerate because you genuinely care about not causing others difficulty. Let's get practical with Hansei. This is the practice of self-reflection and acknowledgement of mistakes. In Japanese business culture, after a project or event, teams conduct Hansei sessions where they honestly examine what went wrong and what could be improved. The key here is that it's not about blame or punishment. It's about learning. Everyone participates, including leaders. You acknowledge errors, analyze root causes, and commit to improvements. This creates a culture where mistakes aren't hidden or denied. They're seen as valuable learning opportunities. Contrast this with cultures where people desperately cover their mistakes, where admitting error is seen as weakness, where blame gets passed around. That environment stifles innovation because people are afraid to try anything risky. They hide problems until they become catastrophic. Hansei creates psychological safety to be honest about what's not working. If this practice was taught from childhood, we'd raise people who can honestly assess their own performance, who see failure as data rather than identity, and who continuously improve because they're not defensive about their shortcomings. Number 8 is something really special called kintsugi. This is the art of repairing broken pottery with lacquer mixed with gold, silver, or platinum. Instead of hiding the cracks or throwing away the broken piece, kintsugi highlights the repair, making it part of the object's history and beauty. The philosophy behind it is profound. Breakage and repair are part of an object's story, not something to disguise. The piece is more beautiful for having been broken. This applies metaphorically to people too. Your struggles, your failures, your trauma, they're not flaws to hide. They're part of what makes you uniquely you. The scars can become the most beautiful parts if you treat them with care and acceptance. In a world obsessed with perfection, what with filtering and hiding any imperfection, kintsugi offers a radically different perspective. Embrace your breaks. Repair yourself with something precious. Be more beautiful for having survived and healed. Teaching this concept everywhere would help combat shame, reduce the pressure of perfectionism, and help people integrate their difficult experiences into a coherent and valued identity. Here's one for the workplace. Nemawashi literally means going around the roots, and it refers to the process of laying groundwork and building consensus before formal decisions. Instead of one person making a decision and announcing it, you informally discuss the idea with stakeholders ahead of time, gather input, address concerns, and build agreement. By the time the formal meeting happens, everyone's already on board. The decision is essentially made. The meeting is just a formalization. This might sound slow, but it actually speeds up implementation because you don't have resistance after the decision. Everyone already bought in during Nemawashi. They had their concerns addressed. They contributed to shaping the idea. Compare this to top-down decision-making where a decree comes down, nobody was consulted, and implementation drags because people resist or don't understand the reasoning. Nemawashi creates better decisions through diverse input and smoother implementation through early buy-in. Organizations everywhere would benefit from this approach, especially in our increasingly collaborative and complex work environments. Let's talk about something that could revolutionize how we think about mistakes. In Japan, there's a concept embedded in how children are taught to view errors. Mistakes aren't signs of low ability, they're opportunities to grow. This seems obvious, but it's taught and reinforced systematically. When a student struggles, the response isn't, "You're not smart enough." It's, "You haven't learned this yet." That tiny word, "yet," changes everything. It frames ability as something developed through effort rather than something fixed. This connects to what psychologists call growth mindset. Japanese education reinforces this culturally. Struggling is normal. Effort is valued over innate talent. Making mistakes is part of mastering anything. If every education system embedded this attitude, we'd have fewer kids giving up when things get hard. We'd have more resilience, more persistence, and ultimately more people reaching their potential because they didn't write themselves off after initial difficulty. Number 11 is the concept of ma, which refers to negative space, the pause, the interval. In art, it's the empty space that gives context to the objects. In music, it's the silence between notes. In conversation, it's the pause that gives weight to words. Western culture often fears emptiness. We fill silence with noise, space with clutter, schedules with constant activity. Ma teaches that the empty space is not nothing, it's essential. It gives meaning to what surrounds it. Practically, this means embracing pauses in conversation instead of rushing to fill silence. It means leaving empty space in design rather than cramming every inch. It means building rest into your schedule rather than optimizing every moment for productivity. The pause is where reflection happens, where beauty breathes, where meaning settles in. Teaching Ma everywhere would help combat our addiction to constant stimulation and help people appreciate subtlety, silence, and the power of what's not there. Here's a social practice that's incredibly powerful. Osatai is the tradition of offering kindness to strangers, particularly pilgrims, without expecting anything in return. Along pilgrimage routes in Japan, locals offer food, drinks, or shelter to travelers. The giver receives spiritual benefit from the act of giving itself. This creates a culture of generosity where helping strangers is normal and valued. Imagine if this was cultivated globally, but not random acts of kindness as some occasional novelty, but a systematic cultural practice of offering help to strangers, because it's spiritually and socially valuable. We'd build more connected communities, reduce isolation, and create environments where people feel supported, even among strangers. It shifts the default from suspicion and self-interest to openness and generosity. This doesn't mean being naive about safety, but it does mean building cultures where helping others is expected and celebrated rather than exceptional and suspicious. Finally, let's end with Gaiman, which means enduring the unbearable with patience and dignity. It's about perseverance, self-control, and maintaining composure in difficult circumstances. Before this sounds like toxic positivity or suppressing emotions, understand the nuance. Gaiman isn't about pretending everything's fine. It's about not letting hardship destroy your dignity or control your behavior. It's about resilience. When a crisis happens, panic doesn't help. Complaining doesn't change the situation. Gaiman is the strength to endure difficulty while maintaining your principles and working toward solutions. After natural disasters, Japanese communities often demonstrate remarkable gammon, helping each other, staying orderly, and rebuilding without descending into chaos. This isn't about suffering in silence, it's about facing reality, accepting what can't be changed, and persevering with grace. Teaching this everywhere would build more resilient individuals and communities capable of handling adversity without falling apart. So, there you have it. 13 brilliant ideas from Japan that could genuinely improve life everywhere if they were widely adopted. Continuous improvement through Kaizen. Finding purpose through Ikigai. Building responsibility by cleaning your own spaces. Respecting resources with Motenai. Healing through nature with Shinrin Yoku. Considering others through Omoyari. Learning from mistakes with Hansei. Finding beauty in brokenness through Kintsugi. Building consensus with Nemawashi. Embracing growth mindset in education. Appreciating negative space with Ma. Practicing generosity through Osatai. And enduring with dignity through Gaman. These aren't just interesting cultural quirks, they're practical philosophies that address real problems in how we live, work, learn, and relate to each other. The beautiful thing is, you don't have to wait for schools or governments to teach these. You can start applying them in your own life right now. Pick one that resonates. Try it. See what happens. And if you found this valuable, make sure you're subscribed because we're constantly exploring ideas from around the world that can make your life better. What concept hit hardest for you? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Before you close out this video, though, I want to take a moment to really emphasize something important. These 13 ideas aren't just abstract philosophies locked away in Japanese culture. They're living, breathing practices that millions of people use every single day to make real improvements in their actual lives. And the thing that's so powerful about them is their universality. Whether you're in Tokyo or Toronto, whether you speak Japanese or not, these principles tap into something fundamentally human about how we want to live and connect with each other. Think about the person in your life who seems to have it all figured out, who's calm under pressure, who makes thoughtful decisions, who respects others without being asked, who keeps improving despite setbacks. They're probably naturally embodying several of these concepts. What if you could intentionally develop those same qualities? What if you could wake up tomorrow and start implementing just one small change based on these ideas? That's the real power here. You're not waiting for permission or for some perfect moment. You're not waiting for your entire life to change at once. That you're just taking one idea and letting it reshape how you approach one area of your life. Maybe you start with Kaizen. Maybe you commit to 1% improvement in one area. Could be your morning routine, could be how you interact with your family, could be the quality of your work. Just 1% better tomorrow than today. That's it. And then you do it again the next day. In 90 days, you won't be 1% better. You'll be dramatically better because of compounding. Or maybe Ikigai speaks to you more. Maybe you're feeling lost in what you do and you need to reconnect with purpose. Spend some time this week really thinking deeply about what you love, what you're good at, what the world needs, and what actually pays your bills. Start sketching where those overlap. That intersection is where your energy belongs. But the beautiful part about these Japanese concepts is that they're not rigid rules you have to follow perfectly. They're frameworks for thinking differently. They're permission structures to live in ways that feel more authentic and meaningful. Some of these will resonate deeply with you, and others won't, and that's completely fine. This isn't about adopting Japanese culture wholesale. It's about recognizing that brilliant solutions to life's challenges have already been discovered and refined by people in other parts of the world. All we have to do is learn from them and adapt them to our own context. What strikes me most about these 13 ideas is how many of them address problems we're actively struggling with in modern life. We feel like we're not good enough because we equate mistakes with failure. That's a mindset problem. My Kintsugi and growth mindset fix that. We're constantly stressed and burned out. That's a disconnection problem. Shinrin Yoku and Ma fix that. We feel alone and isolated, even surrounded by people. That's a consideration and generosity problem. Omoyari and Osatai fix that. We make bad decisions that people resist. That's a consensus problem. Nemawashi fixes that. Every single one of these ideas emerged because Japanese culture identified a real human problem and developed a systematic way to address it. You might be wondering why these concepts haven't already taken over the world if they're so brilliant. Part of it is simply cultural distance. These ideas developed in a specific context with specific values, and they haven't been packaged and marketed the way Western productivity concepts have. You hear about growth mindset in schools now, but Kaizen is still mostly confined to business contexts. You hear about mindfulness, which is related to Shinrin Yoku, but it's often stripped of its cultural context and turned into another wellness commodity. Part of our job as people who learn about these things is to actually integrate them into our lives and show others what's possible. Here's what I want to challenge you with. Pick one of these 13 concepts. Not the one you think is theoretically the best. Pick the one that made you feel something when you heard it. The one that resonated in your gut. The one that made you think, yeah, I need that, or yeah, I want to be more like that. Now actually try it. Not in some half-committed way. Genuinely commit to embodying that concept for the next 30 days. Notice what changes. But notice how it affects your relationships, your work, your sense of well-being. Notice what becomes easier and what becomes harder. Then come back and tell us about it. Share in the comments what you're trying and what you're noticing. That kind of discussion actually helps all of us because we're learning from each other's experiences. The reason I'm being so emphatic about this is because watching people discover these ideas is genuinely exciting. When someone really grasps Ikigai and starts aligning their life differently, it transforms them. When someone embraces Hansei and stops being defensive about their mistakes, their whole approach to learning changes. When someone understands Kintsugi and starts accepting their own scars instead of hiding them, their self-compassion deepens. These aren't just nice ideas, but they're life-altering when actually applied. We've got plenty more content coming exploring these kinds of insights from cultures all over the world. There are frameworks from Scandinavian countries about work-life balance, African philosophies about community, Indian practices about health and well-being, indigenous wisdom about sustainability. The world is full of people who've already figured out how to live better, and we've got the privilege of learning from all of them. If you don't want to miss that content, please subscribe. Hit that notification bell so you actually get notified when we upload because YouTube doesn't show you everything automatically anymore. I genuinely appreciate you spending your time watching this. Your attention is valuable and there's infinite content competing for it. So the fact that you're here means something. Hopefully this gave you something useful to think about or maybe even something to try. That's really all we're going for with each video. Some small idea that might make your life a little bit better or help you understand people and the world a little differently.